This is a spiritual podcast. If you're not into prayer, you don't have to be. I ask that you to be open to the possibility of shifting your mindset around what prayer looks like, though. Because ultimately, I want to shift the conversation about what it looks like to be a spiritual person. Welcome to the Reluctant Priestess podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Goldberg, and this is your space to explore the weird, woo-woo, and sublime world of spirit in a grounded and playful way. Each week, we'll learn how to navigate both the beauty and the bullshit of the spiritual world to see how and if all the fabulous topics in the name of wellness that you've been curious to know more about can actually help you uncover what it means to live a more deeply connected, inspiring, and fulfilling life. If navigating the world of the unseen has felt overwhelming, fake, or too out there for you to explore on your own before, you're exactly where you need to be. The cosmic abyss awaits, my love. Let's see what magic lies in store for us today. Hello, beauties. Welcome to another episode of The Reluctant Priestess. So much has happened since my last episode. It's only been a week, and every day feels like there is monumental change. Sometimes when somebody asks me what I did the day before, I can't even remember because it feels like a whole day has passed in between. Well, that's stupid because that's exactly what has happened. Sometimes I can't remember what I did the day before because it feels like a whole day passed. What a goober. Longer than a day has passed. That's what I mean. Every day feels really intense. So much has happened. We had a full moon in Libra this past weekend, and full moons are all about letting go. Libra is a sign all about relationships and union, and it fell on Easter, and Easter is a holiday in the Judeo-Christian teachings about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Some of you are probably most familiar with that storyline. And so obviously just life after death. And it actually has ties to an even more ancient ritual and tradition of celebrating the pagan goddess Esther, who is the goddess of the dawn and of fertility. And she actually, which is so funny, she apparently found a bird in that legend, and she saved it by transforming it into a rabbit, which it was still able to lay eggs. It had retained that gift as a bird when it turned into a hare. So, there's some understanding now of why rabbits are giving eggs during the more commercialized version of Easter with the Easter bunny. And I just share that, not to diminish the Christian telling, not to diminish any of it, but just to illuminate how it's all connected. And this idea of rebirth is really and was really prominent this past weekend with the full moon, right? Full moon all about letting go, allowing for new things to come in. So AKA rebirth, the story of Christ, and then also we have Esther. And in the Jewish tradition, we also have Passover, and Passover is celebrating the exodus of the Jews from slavery in Egypt. So really, that's also a rebirth. So this whole weekend was really, really, really rife with this potent narrative. And for me personally, I felt that really strongly because I know I've mentioned it here, and I've mentioned it on my Instagram. If you're not already following me at the FMS Hannah Goldberg, go ahead and do that. But I was really struggling the past few weeks because my lunar cycle hadn't started over again. And my cycle is usually anywhere between 24 to 28 days, pretty regular. And I'm not on any hormone birth control or anything. I used to for a really long time, and then decided a few years ago I just really didn't want to be on it anything anymore. So totally off of birth control, nothing nothing hormonal or non-hormonal. And so my cycle is really, really regular now. And it was 22 days late this time, which was so wild. So I was basically in this elongated, prolonged luteal phase. Luteal phase happens right before we bleed, for those of us who have menstrual cycles, right? So the luteal phase is always a little bit more challenging. At least for me, that's my experience of it, where I become really internal, I become really tired, I become hangry, I just eat everything in sight, and it's really intense as I'm leading up. I feel really bloated. So I've been feeling so stuck, so bloated in my body, really not myself, not my best self, just not myself at all. And I wasn't worried about it. I had some people who were concerned for me, some friends who were concerned and were like, something's wrong with you. And I didn't really feel that, right? That was a projection. I didn't feel like anything was wrong with me. I truly knew what it was about. It was an energetic hold, because I knew that I was releasing something and working through something really intense. And it was about relationships and about how I see myself in relationships and how I usually chase after things that are not necessarily meant for me. I have found that when I do my own thing and I don't chase, that everyone who is meant for me comes into my field, truly. And so I don't need to chase, I attract. And that is a new way of being for me, because that was not how I used to operate. I used to want to be desired so badly and to be seen so badly. And I'm saying used to, as in like, I just shifted this narrative as of like 2 days ago. Like I felt that narrative leave my body. So this is a recent past tense thing, but it's past tense nonetheless. But I don't chase anymore. I will not do that. That narrative was basically like building up to get totally let go, because on Easter morning, it's the most poignant. It's like the most poignant literary moment. I love when magic moments like this happen. My English nerd comes out, like, my film nerd comes out, all of it, because I love, love, love these really beautiful moments where you can't even write it. You can't make this shit up. It's just real. It happens. So I'm laying in bed, and I had been at this full moon party the night before. It's at this insanely gorgeous healing center, like right on the cliffs in Bali, overlooking the ocean. And we're looking at the sunset, and we're watching this beautiful man who is my friend, like playing the piano. And it's just so magic. And I am full of so much anger. And I'm there with like my dear, 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 dear sister. And we're sitting together, and she is there supporting me because she knows what I am experiencing and going through. And I'm struggling so, so, so hard. And I'm really trying to release whatever is happening, right, at this full moon party. And I'm just like praying, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, please, I want my moon to come in so I can release whatever is building up. I don't want to feel these feelings anymore. I want them to all go away. I know what this is about. And I had known that my period was going to come in because I had started spotting like the day before this full moon party, right? And I was like, okay, I know it's coming. It's not going to just tease me, like it's coming in. And I was hoping it would come in during the middle of this big party, right? It didn't come in during the middle of the party, but the next morning, on Easter morning, right? The day all about rebirth, resurrection, new life. And I must have been dreaming. I dream a lot and I remember my dreams constantly, but I didn't remember what I was dreaming about. But I was woken up somehow, and all of a sudden I started hearing sounds, and I was in a hotel because I wasn't in my town. I was visiting another town for this party. And I heard these sounds above me of people definitely having sex, like irregular headboard banging against the wall sex. So I was like, okay, well, at least, I'm clearly not getting it on, but someone is at least getting it on. And then I'm lying there in bed and I'm kind of lucid, right? Because I'm half awake, half asleep, just like in that liminal space of awareness. And that's when actually the really, really, really potent spiritual messages can come through, is in that liminal space. And I'm not thinking that as it's happening, but just so you are aware, I'm sharing that. One of the main things that I've been struggling with, all of a sudden, I have a new perspective on it. And I think a new thought. I love when I think new thoughts. And as soon as I had the new thought, I felt my womb start to contract, and I knew that my period had just come in. In that moment, I felt such a rush of peace wash over me. My heart felt relaxed and peaceful. My body felt relaxed and peaceful. And I just felt all this energy start to just move through my body and like move out through my womb. And I know that might sound really bananas to some of you. How can you know that? The only way I can say that I know that is because I know how to listen to myself, and I understand it. I innerstand it. I don't stand under the authority from outside of myself. I stand within myself of knowing what is happening without needing any external reinforcement or validation. I understand. I have to give credit to my sister Esther for that word, because she uses it all the time. And it's important to give credit to the people who inspire us with all the things, right? Just like the understanding. So thank you, Esther, for giving me that I'm still shifting that language. I'll get it down soon. I really love that word, but understand. I understand. That's what happened. And all that emotional eating that I was doing for the past few weeks, I've been feeling so uncomfortable in my body. I've been feeling so juicy, and not in a sexy way, not at all in a sexy way. I've just been feeling juicy and ripe and like I'm about to pop. All of that emotional eating that I was doing, all of a sudden, I was like, I'm not even hungry. It doesn't mean I don't want to eat, right? That's not the deal. But when we have moments of energy shifts, the way that we experience food, from what I have experienced in major energetic shifts, all of it changes. Because food is energy, right? Literally, it gives us energy. So all of these exchanges, all of these ways that we experience energy and that we consume energy and how we relate to energy, all of it shifts. Within 24 hours after receiving my moon, I am wearing clothing that is more revealing than what I was comfortable wearing before. And I just see myself differently. I'm like, wow. It's not like I lost tons and tons of physical weight to like feel more comfortable and beautiful in my body. I literally there was a mental shift. There was an energetic click, like a lock in. And all of a sudden I'm just like, wow, I'm fucking radiant and gorgeous. And this is what I want to wear. And I went and I ate actually like quite a bit of food today. And it was not because I was emotionally eating, it was out of pleasure, right? So the intention's different. So that's what I mean when I say like the energy is different and we just start to move through things differently. My God, though, I'm so grateful. 22 days late. I know some of you have experienced it for even longer, so I know you get that, and some of you have never experienced that. And so, like, just for whatever it's worth, right, wherever and however you're hearing this, just 22 days late. I had a 50 day cycle. All of the numbers matter, by the way, right? We haven't really spoken a lot about numerology, but in the sacred practices of numerology, the numbers have meaning. The numbers hold significance, right? So 22 is a number of basically like manifestation, right? Think about what it is you desire and it will come forward to you, and you start to see 2 2 or 2 2 2 or things like that. And 2 plus 2 is 4, and 4 in numerology is a number of like angelic presence. And so like the angels are with you. And then 5 is a number about change coming. Oof. For me, this was the most beautiful, poignant gift I could receive. I received peace. I received clarity. My entire energy shifted within a moment. Within a moment, I had so much clarity. So that was just in one day, right? Like not even 24 hours. That's what happened. That's how fast things can move when we start to pay attention. Hopefully you also had beautiful, magical moments this entire week. I call in magic and I call in understanding and the people who are meant for me without chasing, right? But to attract them in, rather. I call all of this in every morning during my morning meditations and prayers. And that's really what I wanted to get into today, is about prayer. The power of prayer. This is a spiritual podcast. If you're not into prayer, you don't have to be. I ask that you to be open to the possibility of shifting your mindset around what prayer looks like, though. Because ultimately, I want to shift the conversation about what it looks like to be a spiritual person, how we pray, how we commune with spirit. I want to shift that stereotypical person that you have in your mind. I want it to shift because there are so many different ways to be a spiritual person. So many different ways. And if lighting incense and singing under the stars and running around naked and cleansing your crystals under the full moon is your vibe and that's what you want to do, awesome. Awesome. And if that has no interest for you whatsoever, then don't do it. If the way you commune with spirit is you go into nature for a hike every day, and that is how you connect, whether you are actively praying or actively meditating, but you know that you go because it helps you feel clear, it helps you see the magic in the mundane, it helps you connect with something bigger than yourself. Superb. That's amazing. You are spiritual. So I want to talk about prayer today because I want to express to you that there's no right way to pray. If you've come from a religious background that has more strict rules about this is how we pray. We sit this way, we bow this way, we ask this way. We do not directly communicate with spirit because we have clergy or we have people who are higher up in the chain of spiritual command than us as humans who are flawed and sinned, right? If you're coming at it from that perspective, then you might feel a little intimidated by it, or you might feel really honestly triggered by it. Because I know in America, as Americans, there's a lot of people that are like, I'll pray for you. I hope that everything works out. And then there's no action. And it's like, well, here's the thing. There's no wrong way to pray. And there's also a correct way to pray. is my favorite part about everything, is the dualism of everything. So what do I mean by there's no right way to pray? I mean that however you commune with spirit, that feels peaceful and aligned in your body, that brings you connection and like real understanding and real understanding, even if it's not rational, but you get it, then that is prayer. And that is powerful. When I say that there's a wrong way to pray, I mean people who are coming at it with the intention of fear and shame. Whatever you want to call spirit, at the end of the day, the energy of spirit is love. If all you want to just say is, I connect to love, capital L, great. If you are connecting to love with abundance in your heart, with faith, with trust in your heart, that the energy of the universe is working so hard for you, that energy is transformative. When we come at things from the energy of fear, from the ego, from lack, that is when energy becomes constricted. And that's when we feel like no action is taken. So if somebody's like, I'll pray for you, but then they actually have no intention of having anything come through, and it's coming through from shame, it's coming through from guilt, like that energy just doesn't feel right. But like the power of prayer is really potent. I speak from personal experience. I didn't believe in it. At first. I didn't grow up in an overly religious house. I grew up half Catholic, half Jewish. I grew up as a cashew. I had both religions, but kind of like neither religion at the same time. And not until I was 13 did I become a Catholic. And I chose it because I wanted to have Christmas. And my mom was like, if you become Jewish, you won't be able to have Christmas. And I was like, can I have Hanukkah if I become Catholic? And she's like, yes. And I was like, great, fantastic. I will be Catholic. But I didn't tell anyone. I felt a lot of shame for choosing Christmas for a really long time. Now I just think it's hilarious. But I didn't grow up in overly religious practices. And I still felt a lot of shame once I entered into the more religious space that I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't doing it the right way. Again, coming at it from the perfectionism lens, coming at it from the people-pleasing lens. I wanted to do it right because I wanted to fit in so badly. And once we went to church, we went to a very, very, very conservative Catholic church. And this was a space, it was around 9/11, and my family was moving into those more conservative spaces. There's a lot of fear in the air at the time in the United States. I knew people who had lost people in 9/11. So the fear was really palpable in 2001. And so there is a different energy that we were all working with. And so it took me a while. That was in 2001. And not until the past year and a half, maybe the middle of 2020, and that's being generous. I'm really realistically, I don't think I started feeling confident that the way that I prayed was my own and an amalgamation of like all these different practices and intuitive understandings, and feeling confident in that, regardless of how it sounded or what it looked like or anything. I probably didn't feel super confident in any of that until the middle of 2021. I say really confident in that, like, I just realized that I was my own spiritual authority. It wasn't even just like I realized it. I had remembered that I had always kind of been that way. When I was growing up and I had entered into the church, there were things that I didn't believe about some of the Catholic doctrine. Like, it didn't make sense to me that, for instance, I couldn't speak directly to God, that I had to go through a priest or the Pope to do that. That didn't make any sense to me. And I would lie in bed at night and I would pray, but I had shame and guilt around it because I was like, I don't think I'm doing it right, but like, this is what makes sense to me. And I still did it anyway. But I would pray and I imagined God as a DJ. I basically was like dialing in every night to speak to God, who is like a really hippie old man with a long gray hair and like a Grateful Dead shirt. And he was like drinking coffee and like smoking a cigarette, and like he had his like glasses, his hippie glasses on, and he basically looked like Chong from Cheech and Chong. If you've ever seen that 70s show, he's like I forget the character's name, but you know who I'm talking about if you've ever watched that 70s show. So that was basically how I pictured God. And I was doing that when I was a teenager. I don't necessarily picture God that way now. I don't really have a visual of what God looks like these days. I just know that it's an energy and it's love, and that's what it is. So it's really interesting. I now have all of these different practices, and I have all these different things that I say, and they're not affirmations. I think I spoke to this a little bit last week, that we can command what it is that we desire, that I command every morning. I mean, I ask for it kindly because I desire to do that. I ask with love, but also with clarity, with purpose, with zeal and vigor. And I'm like, I ask that only the people, places, things, and experiences that are meant for me in my highest interest and who love me unconditionally, that they come in to my life today. And I ask that all others stay away. And that is how I have learned more how to attract. So we practice how to pray. We like anything else. We practice how to listen to ourselves. So what we know rings true for us, we feel it deeply in our bodies. That's what embodiment is all about. Learning how to listen to our bodies so we understand what is real, what is inspired action or thought or feeling for us. The beauty of prayer is you can start whenever. If it's been many, many years since you've prayed, if it's never been since you prayed, if it's been since yesterday and you decide to shift what it looks like that is the beauty of prayer. It's there for you whenever. And you are a direct line to source, to love, because you are love. Whether you believe it or not, you don't have to. That's what I have learned about the spirit world that I love so much. You don't have to believe for it to be true. I have a friend who I met on my travels. He's this 6'7" Jewish man from New York. So he's very, 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 very tall. He's like the tallest human I've ever seen in real life. 6'7" Jewish man who does qigong healing and freestyle rapping. And I'm describing him exactly how he describes himself. He has a whole t-shirt and everything. Like it's his shtick. This is what he does. He's a nomad, and he like gets paid at Washington Square Park. Go visit him. He's in New York right now. So if you're in New York, that's my friend Kriyavan. He'll be there for a little bit longer. But he taught me that. He was like, you don't have to believe that I have connection to energetic healing and can heal people. You don't have to believe that to be true. It just is. So basically, when people doubt him and they're like, I have an ear infection, can you heal me? And he's like, let's see. And they're like, well, how much are you going to charge me? He goes, you can pay me afterwards. And if it doesn't work, you don't have to pay me. But like, if it does, then go ahead and pay me. And because he just knows that like, they don't have to believe it to be true. It's just going to happen. And he has had some wild stories about healings that he has done. So that is the beauty of the spiritual world. You don't have to believe that you are love incarnate, that you yourself are God, our source. That might feel really uncomfortable for a lot of you. I felt uncomfortable when I first heard it too. I go, isn't that blasphemous? We can't say that we are God. No, you are. That is the whole beauty and purpose of it being life, is realizing, of recognizing, of remembering that you are source, that you are way more powerful than you think, that you are a beacon of love and of light for everyone and everything around you. And because you When you realize that, you start amplifying and magnifying and magnetizing all these other people that want to remember it as well. You've got people who will be fearful of it too, who will throw like all this darkness and shade and, all this stuff at you too. But when you vibrate at a different level, you don't feel it in the same way. You can shake it off. Everything gets drawn towards the flame. Once you realize that that is who you are, whole perspective shifts. Everything shifts. I say this from personal experience. I didn't believe any of this. I didn't believe any of this a year ago. I didn't believe any of that. I was still figuring it out. I still am figuring it out, but like I've peeled back another layer of the onion to be able to say, I get this much now. And it's neither better or worse. It's not a hierarchical thing. Everyone's exactly where they need to be on their path of understanding, of comprehending. Everyone plays their part. Everyone plays their role. All of it is perfect, even in the imperfections. That's how it works. So if you have been curious about what prayer could be, it can be anything, babe. It can be anything you want it to be. All you're doing is praying to the parts of yourself, of your ancestors, of the energies. You're just praying to those parts of yourself that you already are. So let me give a little bit more clarity. I know if I'm told there are infinite possibilities, that can really activate my anxiety. The anxiety, it's not mine. Reframe of words. I am not the anxiety that I feel at times. But I know if I'm told that there are infinite possibilities, that can activate and engage the part of me that feels anxious with that. I like to have a understanding sometimes of what things can look like, and then I can build off of them and expand or totally reject them. But I like to have a baseline understanding. So if you can relate, this is for you. Meditation and prayer really go hand in hand for me at this time. I have an altar. It's quite large. It's grown pretty big over the past few years since I started building it. I start with some smoke cleansing. Smoke cleansing meaning like I will use juniper. Juniper is the plant that some of my ancestors on the Anglo side, because my mom's side, there are ties to the Vikings. So they would use juniper for smoke cleansing rituals. Or I also like to use frankincense. I love working with frankincense. And that is something from the Middle East where like my dad's side originated from. So I have ties to both of those tools. And so I do smoke cleansing. I love it. It engages my senses, right? I engage sounds for hearing. I engage smoke for smelling. I also do tea meditation. So there's taste that's activated as well. And so I drink tea and I bring a few pieces from my altar to another space where I can sit, because I can't really sit in front of the altar that I have. I mean, I can, but not comfortably. So I find a place where I can sit a little bit more comfortably, because there's no wrong way to meditate either. Heads up. We already talked about that. If you don't remember or you haven't heard that episode, go back to the episode where I talk about meditation. So I bring a few pieces from my altar that are specifically calling to me that morning, and I bring them to this other spot where I sit, and I sit in silence. Sometimes I hold my crystal, so then there's touch. Again, bringing it to the senses. My eyes are closed, so sight is more inward and introverted. I see through my third eye. That also activates the sixth sense, which to me is interoception, which is inner knowing. Like that's it. That's it, baby. Like that is it. And then I engage more sound as it makes sense to. And when I say that, I mean, for me, the vocal activation in my practice is so, so important. I sing Sometimes I speak in light language. It's all light language, but sometimes there's actual words that come out, and sometimes it's just sounds. And that happens. I don't force it. Usually, sometimes to kind of get out of my head, I will allow myself to make some sounds, because there are specific sounds that you can make to ground yourself or to connect or to like release energy. So sometimes I will make different sounds based on what it is that I feel is necessary and how I'm showing up. And that usually gets me out of my head. It brings me more into a state of presence and a state of grace. And then I speak everything into existence. So then I call in my entire spiritual team. And I have a really big team. My team is so vast. And it's really important when you're calling in your team. So your team might be like guardian angels. Your team might be your ancestors. I don't know who your team is yet. You might not know either. And so that's okay. But make sure whoever you call in the spirits of light, the spirits who love you unconditionally, the ones that are there for you in your highest interest, because there are darker forces and darker spirits, right? If there can be light spirits, and there can also be dark spirits, right? There are both, because we live in a world where there's both, like there's different energies that we're working with. So you want to make sure that you're calling in the spirits of light. That's super important. So then I call in my spirits of light, and then I give thanks, and I call in what I am desiring for that day. I call in protection. I call in support. If you don't ask for it, you won't get it. Period. Spirit doesn't give if we don't ask. Meow, meow. And that is true in the 3D world as well. That's why I call in what it is that I'm desiring every morning. And then I always close everything out. So I open up the space, I set the container. We want to make sure that we are not leaking our energy. It's really important for me to open the container and then to close the container. And that's how it is. So it's a combination of sitting in silence, of being really present, and then I speak everything into existence. And that's it. And some days I meditate and I pray for like 5 minutes. And that's what I have the capacity for. And sometimes it's over an hour. Sometimes it's multiple hours. Sometimes I feel the desire to pull oracle cards and to receive messages from spirit that way. And so that's another thing that I do. So there's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. Sometimes I'm sitting inside and I start meditating and praying, and I look outside and I go, wow, I really want to be outside right now. And I sit on the grass, or I strip down naked and I receive the sun. And that is my practice that day. I listen to what my body desires. I listen to what it craves. And then I do the thing that connects me to something more powerful than myself. That is something grander and bigger than just this one little human version of me that holds all of that God energy inside. And I connect to that aspect of myself in all these different ways. So the main things to take away for if it feels right for you is, do you feel peace in your body when you do it? Like, really, do you feel peace? It might feel uncomfortable at first because it might be going against everything you've ever been taught and told. But do you feel peace in your body? Even if it doesn't make sense, like with your logical mind, if it makes sense in your heart, if it makes sense in your physicality, perfect. Does it help you feel present? That peace, that calm, that clarity? And do you feel connected? Do you feel uplifted? Some days I leave my prayers and meditation, I don't feel uplifted. Sometimes I feel really, really stressed. And you know what happens on those days? Ego's running the show. That's okay. I do my best to still feel as much grace and love for myself as possible. Forgive myself. And I just acknowledge it. I go, today is a more challenging day for that. I forgive myself. I'm so grateful for the practice of prayer. I never really thought that I would be, but it's helped me so much in feeling way more aligned, way more confident in my truth. So I hope that this was helpful, even to just one of you. And if you've listened this far, thank you. Ask whatever questions are coming up for you. Reach out, connect with me. I want to hear from you. And I'm excited because this next week I'm also going to be releasing some additional offerings. I have my 12-week program, if that is something you want to just dive right straight into, if you want some additional support in coming to all these inner standings for yourself. And I have some additional offerings that will not be so long or so intensive in that way that I will be releasing over the next week. So be on the lookout for that and take care of yourself. I love you. Be well, darlings. Mwah. Thank you so much for tuning into this very reluctant priestesses podcast. Without you, I'm just talking to myself, and as much as I actually enjoy that these days, this is way more fun. If you liked this episode, please be sure to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. And take a moment to send this to someone who you think this episode might resonate with. Who knows? Maybe it's the bit of magic they didn't know they were looking for. Until next time, ciao.